Steelix! I've already mentioned in the Kingdra Steelix video that Steelix is an absolute beast, and one of the only ways to deal with it is to hit it for weakness. So its major competitors in that area were Macargo and Dark Houndoom. So to combat these hard-hitting fire types, you would pair Steelix with a water type that could in turn hit those fire types for weakness, like Kingdra or a Mantine. But those weren't your only options. In fact, you had another water type Pokemon that was a great partner for Steelix that could utilize the same fighting energy as Onix. Talking about Kabutops, like Kingdra, it is a stage 2 Pokemon with 90 HP that can attack for 1 energy. Now of course, to fully utilize Hydro Cutter and deal that massive water type damage, you're going to need 3 energy on there. Unlike Kingdra, Kabutops does have a weakness, but it's to Grass type, which Steelix is resistant to, so Kabutops and Steelix kind of cover each other's weakness in that way. Kabutops also has a little bit of support in Fossil Egg that will allow you to evolve up into a Kabutops faster than you could evolve up into a Kingdra. Utilizing Fossil Egg in multiple ways can actually set you up to surprise your opponent in a couple of ways that we'll get into with the deck list, but I just wanted to make the point that Kabutops and Kingdra are both solid water type attackers to pair with Steelix. They just have their own pros and cons depending on which you prefer and what your playstyle is like. The Kingdra build I posted earlier is more consistent and reliable, but this Kabutops build is a lot more chaotic and fun. So once you've watched both videos, maybe played around with each of the builds, you'll have to let me know down in the comments which one you prefer. This time we're going to be using the Neo Genesis Onix, the one that only has 60 HP. And the reason for that will become clear a little later in the video. And this Onix is weak to grass, much like the Kabutops line is, so you do have to be careful if you're up against a fast grass deck, maybe a Meganium build that's using Pokemon Breeder, that your Onixes aren't going to get picked off before you can evolve them into Steelix, which resists grass. 3 copies of Genesis Onix, and then 3 copies of that Genesis Steelix. Steelix, of course, like all metal Pokemon, are very difficult to knock out when they have metal energy attached to them, especially when they start out with 110 HP. Any damage that does get through can easily get healed off with Goldberry. All the meanwhile, Steelix will be hitting you for 30 to 50 damage every turn. Typically, I would say attach 1 or 2 metal energy to each of your Steelix, but because in this build are running a 3-3 set of Steelix, and you're going to want to attach fighting energy for those 2 colorless in Tail Crush, I would say just attach 1 metal energy per Steelix. You got that extra one as kind of a backup. You can throw down an extra one just for the extra defense if you think you need it, and if it would be used effectively against your opponent's strategy, then go for it. 3 copies of Mysterious Fossil. Thankfully, Mysterious Fossil was reprinted in Legendary Collection. Otherwise, for Neo On, you would have to rely on a coin flip on Fossil Egg just to get these fossil Pokemon into play. So Kabuto can evolve from a Mysterious Fossil, or it can be brought into play with Fossil Egg. Your Kabutos and your Onixes will be your biggest liabilities in this deck, as they're both weak to grass. Both are relatively low HP, so they could get hit early on. That's why it's kind of important to evolve those up as quickly as you can. That way you don't fall victim to a well-placed Double Gust. Kabutops is still weak to grass, but with 90 HP, it has a much better chance. And the fact that you could swap it out for a Steelix with your own Double Gust which resists grass really helps a lot. It's also very helpful that Kabutops has that slash attack for only 1 energy, so that while you're setting up a full power Hydro Cutter, you can still deal consistent damage with slash instead of having to risk damage off of flipping coins with Hydro Cutter if you only have 1 or 2 energy attached. And since this deck is already using Mysterious Fossil and Fossil Egg, you might as well sneak in one other little trick, which is Aerodactyl from Neo Revelation, which lets evolved Pokemon access the attacks of earlier forms, meaning that Steelix, with those 2 fighting energy attached, can access Rage off of that Onix and deal up to 110 damage. So using those fighting energy, you have a Kabutops that can deal up to 120 damage. and then you would have a Steelix that can deal up to 110 damage, giving you two huge powerhouses, which can be really helpful, especially in mirror matches against other Steelixes. You just have to play your Aerodactyl strategically, as you don't want to leave it on the bench as an easy knockout for a Pichu to get after a few turns. Same for your Kabutos, as those are vulnerable to Pichu's attack, so I would say don't even play down a Kabuto unless you already have the Kabutops in hand or you're confident that you can get it next turn, because if you leave it down for more than one turn, it's gonna get taken out pretty easily. 2 copies of Elm, 2 copies of Copycat for your hand refreshment, Fossil Egg to get into those fossil Pokemon more easily. That way you don't really have to rely on laying down mysterious fossils, which can kind of get knocked out very easily if your opponent knows what you're going for. 4 copies of Bill's Teleporter to give you some extra draw power. Like I always say in these videos, you can just use regular Bill, or you can beef up the number of Copycat in your hand. I just prefer using Bill's Teleporter because it is a little more chaotic and fun, so it fits this deck. Pokemon Trader to get the right evolution cards at the right time, just in case your hand refreshment and draw power doesn't get you those resources. You do have a chance to get them with a Pokemon Trader out of hand. An entire playset of Double Gust, because you never want to pay the retreat cost for Steelix or Kabutops, and this is going to be very critical in matchup management. So even though Kabutops and Steelix cover each other's weaknesses, you still don't want to leave a Kabutops stranded in the active position against a grass-type attacker, in the same way that you don't want to leave Steelix in your active position against a fire-type attacker. For this deck, Double Gust can be your greatest enemy, but also one of your best friends when utilized by you. Goldberry will be another essential tool for maintaining these Steelixes and the Kabutops, making sure that they live attack after attack. That way you can get off those really heavy attacks yourself. No Pokemon Center in this deck, so Goldberry is going to be all the more important for keeping Steelix and Kabutops alive. Because both need 3 energy to attack at full potential, it's just not worth it to have to discard those to heal off any damage when you have Goldberry that you can just attach and heal off little chunks at a time. Power Charge to get back any metal energy that may get discarded by a knocked out Steelix, and a couple copies of Town Volunteers will help you get back those basic fighting energy, as well as any Pokemon cards you need from either of those evolution lines. Steelix matches can sometimes tend to go pretty long too, since it's really hard to knock one out, and sometimes it's hard to rack up enough damage to get 6 knockouts on your opponent, so Town Volunteers will also keep you from decking out. You got your full playset of Special Metal Energy to make your Steelix tougher, make it even harder to knock out. And then I'm also going to have a full playset of Recycle Energy that's going to be in here for Kabutops mainly, but also if you want to attack with Aerodactyl, if you find yourself wanting to hit for a fighting weakness, you could also do that. But for Kabutops, only one of the energy attached actually has to be fighting energy, so the other 2 can be recycle energy, and you can still maximize that damage. And then when a Kabutops gets knocked out, those 2 recycle energy can go straight back to your hand, so you can start loading them up on another one. And this is also going to be helpful so you don't have to rely as much on Town Volunteer to recycle those fighting energy when you have an energy that recycles itself. The rest of the deck will be filled out by 8 basic fighting energy, which are going to give you access to Onix's Rage once Aerodactyl hits the field, but also you need that 1 fighting energy for Hydro Cutter, and for the rest you can throw onto Aerodactyl maybe if you want to use Fly. Again, not overall as consistent as a Kingdra Steelix build, but your opponent will second guess how much damage they want to rack up on Steelix in fear of you laying down that Aerodactyl and hitting them back with a Rage. Like other Steelix builds, this one too has a fear for direct damage done to your bench, especially when it comes to Exeggutor, because your opponent can pull out their own Exeggutor against one of your Kabutops in a single Double Gust and absolutely destroy it with a Super Explosion. Not to mention the damage it can do with Cold Shot to a benched Kabuto or Onix or Aerodactyl. This deck also fears Knocklock, as it can discard Mysterious Fossils and Fossil Eggs out of your hand, put them right back in your deck, making it hard to get those fossil Pokemon out onto the field, or potentially reshuffle a Goldberry early game before you can get it attached, which is not good for this deck at all. Getting your setup with Steelix Kabutops can be a little bit slow, which pays off incredibly once you get those 3 energy attached and start attacking, but Knocklock can highly disrupt your setup and make it go even slower, and this deck does not run Pichu to deal with Noctowl. So it could potentially be worth it to run a single copy of Pichu in this deck, maybe a couple. Another addition you can make would be Focus Band. Rework the trainers a little bit to fit in a few copies of Focus Band. That way you can attach it to a Pichu or even onto an Aerodactyl or a Kabuto if you're worried about those getting knocked out early game. Could also be pretty useful in maximizing the damage that Steelix could do with Rage if it holds on with 10 HP off of a Focus Band and then you retaliate with that Rage. Could be very satisfying. Stay tuned to the channel for more Steelix content, as well as a lot of other Neon decks coming soon. If you've got any Neo on deck requests, go ahead and throw those down into the comments. Find links to all of my socials in the video description, and I'll see you guys next video. Bye.